Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So glad to be here with all of you tonight. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. It's always fun to be here with all of you. We're streaming right now. It's going to be downright awesome. It's going to be absolutely phenomenal. I am so excited to be here with all of you. So, yeah, let's do it. Let's have our show.
The American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, 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 everybody. I am so glad that you are here tonight. It's been a wild, wild day for me. Kind of an unexpected turn of events. I ended up someplace, and I'll talk to you all about it later. But yeah, just a normal one of our streams. We are on the YouTube tonight. We are on the Rumble tonight. We're not on Rockfin tonight, but we're streaming on two of our usual platforms. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. The way we do this show, for those of you who may not be familiar with it, is I give my opening remarks, whatever it is that I want to talk about for tonight. Then we do the roll call where we find out who is on the other side of the camera, who's watching. I call you all out as I see you, names and locations. And then from there, after that, I start answering super chat questions or Rumble rant questions for the rest of the night. So if you have something you want me to talk about in the second half of our show, send me a super chat on YouTube or send me a Rumble rant on Rumble, right? And both are appreciated, and I will then put you on the list. If you want to know which one I prefer Rumble Rants. Rumble is a less censored and less controlled platform, and they let me keep more of the money. So yeah, that's the way we do things. So before we get started, couple quick announcements for everybody. First things first, for those of you who may not have heard, there's a very important demonstration coming up. It's coming up on Sunday. It's called Humanity for Peace. That's the name of the rally. Humanity for Peace. It's at the United Nations Plaza, Dag Hammarskjöld Plaza, 47th Street, 2nd Avenue at the United Nations. It's going to be a really important rally. I hope that you can be there. It will start at 1 p.m. on Sunday in New York City, and it's happening throughout the country. There's going to be a rally in Chicago. There's going to be a rally in Portland. There's going to be a rally in Houston, Texas, Los Angeles. There's going to be a rally in Sacramento, San Francisco. It's going to be great. And we at the Center for Political Innovation, we are full-on endorsers and sponsors of the rally. I'll be there. I'll be speaking at the rally. We're bringing a whole team of people that'll be there. It's going to be great. It's going to be really, really tremendous. So I hope to see you there at the United Nations on Sunday. And if you're not in the New York City area, by all means, go to another area, go to another location, because it's going to be a great day of action. Yeah, so it's going to be awesome. I look forward to seeing you at the rally. It's going to be tremendous. It's going to be awesome. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you there. Humanity for Peace. It's going to be a great, great rally backed by a number of different forces: the Libertarian Party, the People's Party, the Party of Communists USA, the Schiller Institute, all kinds of different groups. All kinds of different groups have endorsed it, are promoting it, and it's going to be a very important anti-imperialist rally on the anniversary of Hiroshima. It's going to be great. So I hope to see you at Humanity for Peace on Sunday. Another quick announcement is that Every morning, every single morning, we have a morning message on the Center for Political Innovation YouTube channel every morning. And these messages are really great. They are really a great way to start the day. I tell people these messages exist so people can start their day with revolutionary hope and revolutionary enthusiasm. And that's really what they're there for. So I would encourage you right now to go to the Center for Political Innovation YouTube channel and subscribe. I would encourage you to go and subscribe to the CPI YouTube channel. Go subscribe and start your day with the morning messages. And if you're a friend of this community, we've already had so many people step up to the plate and make morning messages. So I would encourage you, if you haven't already done so, to make a morning message. If you haven't made one already, if you're a CPI member or a friend of the CPI, make a morning message. And these morning messages, they just keep getting better. They just keep getting better. We had one today from Gabby. You guys know Gabby. She's in the chat a lot. She made a very touching morning message that she recorded for us. Beautiful stuff. Absolutely beautiful. Very heartfelt. It was a great way to start the day to hear from Gabby. We got a message airing tomorrow morning. It's going to be great. So it's part of what we're doing as the CPI. Not only do we sponsor demonstrations like the one coming up, but we do morning messages. We do educational weekends. We do conferences, workshops, etc. We do a lot of different things. And if you like what we do, not only should you subscribe to our YouTube channel, but you should become a dues-paying member of the Center for Political Innovation, right? You can do that by going to the website, cpiusa.org, and hitting the join button. I'll drop the link in the chat. We need more members, right? We're up to 107, I think 108 members now of the CPI, and we could always use more. We'd like to plug you into our community. We'd really, really like to plug you into our community. It's really, really great. So there we go. I see we got a super chat already. So I'm writing it down. I'm writing that super chat down. Hold your horses. Hold your horses. Computer is not being cooperative. That's okay. Okay. Please. Okay, so that's what I'm doing. I'm writing down the super chats for the second half of our program. And we would love to have you as part of our community. Communities give us meaning, they give us purpose. And it's actually kind of related tonight. The value of communities like the Center for Political Innovation is really going to come across tonight, because I'm going to talk to you about a couple things that happened today. Well, one of them is a thing that happened today. The other thing is something that I became aware of today, which is funny, but sad. I don't know. It's just kind of a sign of the time. So yeah, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. And now I'm going to jump into my opening remarks. Keep the super chats and the Rumble rants rolling in. Give me something to talk about in the second half of our show. You guys are a great audience, and I appreciate all that you do. I'll have my eye on the chat. Super chat questions for the second half of the show are greatly appreciated. They give me something to talk about. So, folks, I don't know if you know what happened today in New York City, but today New York City was the site of the PlayStation riot. The PlayStation riot broke out at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in New York City, and I got there shortly after the dust cleared. I was there a little before 6 o'clock, yeah, I mean, it was stupid. So here's what happened. This afternoon, Kai Cenat, who is a Twitch streamer, announced that he was going to be in Union Square in New York City, and he was going to give everyone who came a free PlayStation 5. And he announced this, and Manhattan, New York City, Union Square, there's a lot of high schools near there. And so as these high school kids were getting out of school, all of them found out on their phones that if they went to Union Square Park, they could all get a free PlayStation 5 because Kai Cenat, who I've never heard of, right? I mean, I'm sorry, I'm not into social media, but I'm going to pull up a picture because Kai Cenat was going to be there to give them a free PlayStation 5, right? I guess I'll pull up a picture of him. Kai Cenat, right? We'll pull up a picture of him so you know who he is. I'm not familiar with this individual, but I'm pulling up his Wikipedia page. Kai Cenat is an American live streamer and YouTuber, best known for his live streams on Twitch and his comedy-based posts on YouTube. Yeah, I mean that's it. You know, it's funny that he's got a Wikipedia page because, you know, yeah, anyway. So yeah, and so this happened. I guess here's a picture of Kai Cenat in case you're wondering. I've never heard of Kai Cenat. Never heard of him, but this is him. Famous social media personality announced that he was going to be in Union Square giving away free PlayStation 5s. He was there, apparently. He did show up with a few other Twitch streamers, but there were no PlayStation 5s to be found. However, the New York City Police Department did show up, and it wasn't pretty. A number of people got injured. A number of people were arrested. It was a mess. So I'm just going to show you, in case you haven't seen my report already. I already posted my report on YouTube, but this is what I saw when I got to Union Square. I've also got some video of the riot when it went down. I mean, this is what happened. Watch the video. It's my 4-minute report I did. When I got to Union Square, just shortly after they'd cleared the square, I mean, the whole place was locked down. Police were everywhere. And this is what I saw. That just so you know, if you're not familiar with New York, that's the main entrance to the subway from Union Square, and it's completely shut down, exit closed. Folks, so I'm here in New York City's Union Square, and the scene is crawling with police because earlier today there were thousands of people who assembled because they believed they were getting a free PlayStation. Thousands of people convened on Union Square because they saw on the internet that a Twitch streamer had announced free PlayStations would be given away at 4 p.m. Well, there were no free PlayStations, and the crowds got angry. And as you can see, the square is now locked down, completely locked down. The subway station below is locked down.
When I was there, I get out of class, I hear a whole bunch of screaming, I hear yelling, I hear fireworks. I walk down the street, there's a big old Cadillac, there's a whole entire raid of people surrounding it. And when I look, I see Todd, Shay, Duke, Phantom, they all there. They basically almost whole A&P. Phantom was spraying champagne. They was doing a whole bunch of stuff. People was tripping. I'm not lying. You can ask anybody. You can ask anybody. No, you can ask anybody. I swear. On me, I swear. It was all crazy. Everybody started
13th Street and the bottom of Union Square are completely shut down at this point. In the aftermath of the rioting, you can see the destruction, you can see the garbage that's everywhere, the picnic tables that have been turned over. We're hearing the sound of police helicopters that are flying above. Quite an incident here.
I was here when things got out of hand when the cops came in right here. And I don't know how many kids, but there were a lot of kids. And they run really fast. And the cops couldn't disperse it. And it went all over. I saw several arrests, kids. I saw kids throw things at the cops.
Did you see anyone get injured?
I saw one kid, like when they arrested him, his head, I think, went up against the back of the car.
Ooh.
Over there, I think. So, yeah.
So this was all sparked by PlayStations and...
That's what I hear. He was giving away PlayStation, I guess. That's what I hear.
Yeah. So apparently that's what happened today. You saw me walking around in the wreckage afterwards, after the police had kind of occupied the square. Well, aside from this whole thing being very, very, very stupid, right? I've got to tell you what I think is going on, because I have already seen how mainstream media is running with this. Mainstream media is playing up the idea that Kai Cenat didn't have a permit. He didn't have a permit. And I think that this is the post-pandemic method that they've developed for banning public gatherings. They're going to say it's not safe. Now, Kai Cenat, who called this, is already in police custody. I don't know if he's being charged, if they're going to charge him with inciting a riot. But mainstream media is playing up the idea he didn't have a permit. He didn't have a permit. And he announced on social media that everyone should come to a place. He announced on social media that they should come to a place. And look what happened. People got hurt and people were injured and people got arrested. Oh, it was awful. So you know what? From now on, if you want to have a little protest, you got to get a permit, right? Because, since the pandemic and since the George Floyd uprising, they've been pretty lax with that in New York City, right? They let you, they don't mess with you generally. If you got a small crowd of people and you're on the sidewalk and you're not bothering anybody, they don't mess with you. But they've started to mess with people, right? We had our protest, on July 10th before our event, and there was a plainclothes officer who came up to me and was giving me an issue about how we didn't have a permit, said he would let it go this time and all of this. And there was a couple other, plainclothes who came by, and wanted to talk to us. They're starting to crack down on protests again. And I think that especially in the lead up to the 2024 election, after what happened on January 6th and in the lead up to the 2024 election, they want to start banning protests, right? And I would agree with you, David. And I think that that's pretty clearly what's going on here, and that they want to make it so that if you call a protest on social media and somebody gets hurt, you can be held accountable for it. They want to change the law to make that the case. And they also want to make it illegal to assemble without a permit, right? And there are some laws like that like I know in Washington, D.C., you can't have more than 20 people in a place without a permit, or else they have the right to break it up as an illegal assembly. In New York City, as long as you're not blocking the sidewalk, you're allowed to peacefully assemble, and you have to have a sound permit for a microphone, but they generally don't enforce that. They generally don't enforce that at this point. I mean, in the past they have, and they try to make you get a sound permit. And if you get a sound permit in New York City, what they do is you get your sound permit. So then before the protest, they set up this cage around your protest so that and they won't let you hand out leaflets, and they put you in this cage around your sound permit. So, and so they basically make it impossible for you to have a protest. you know, um, since the pandemic, they've been not bothering you if you have sound generally. But they did bother us for having sound on July 10th. They didn't shut it down. They were friendly because it was a small crowd, and the plainclothes officer gave me his business card and whatever. But suddenly I've noticed they're starting to enforce the sound thing again. And it looks like, I am convinced they are using this as a pretext, because going into the 2024 elections, they absolutely do not want there to be big gatherings in the aftermath of the vote. Because, I mean, look, they've got Donald Trump facing huge criminal charges. They are getting ready to have an election that a lot of people are going to be angry about the results, right? Donald Trump is leading in the polls. Every poll shows that Donald Trump would win the election if it were held today. And Donald Trump just got dragged into court, right? He just got, indicted on much more serious charges. Before that, they had him on falsifying business records, and they had him on mishandling classified documents. But now they've got him on, conspiracy to defraud the United States. And, they're going to bury Donald Trump under the jail, basically. So they're getting ready in the lead up to that, right? They've already started cracking down a lot on protests in Washington, D.C. They've been very strict about protests in Washington, D.C. And they just put up the fence. I don't know if you saw, around the U.S. Capitol building. Just yesterday, they put the fence up around the U.S. Capitol building once again. And they're charging Donald Trump for conspiring. And the charges against Donald Trump, I got to say, are very it's a very creative application of the law, right? The charge is conspiracy to defraud the United States. That's the language they're using. And they're alleging that Donald Trump had individuals prepared to be electors in the Electoral College who would have voted for him to be president, individuals who would not have been legit electors. Now, this is all very, very interesting, right? Because they're alleging that Donald Trump knew he was not the legitimate winner of the 2020 election, but he said he was. He argued that he was the legit winner of the election. And so therefore, by doing that, he was, committing fraud against the American government. Now, this is very interesting because, if indeed Donald Trump does not believe he won the election, right? If he believes that the election was stolen from him, the votes were rigged, that's one thing. But if Donald Trump doesn't believe that, if Donald Trump just cynically is saying that in order to try and rile up his supporters, and he was going to try and win the presidency on his part, that's obviously reprehensible. But it's not illegal, I don't think, right? If you're a lawyer, right, in a courtroom, it's not uncommon for you to have a client who's guilty of the crime, and your job is to try and convince the jury they don't have enough evidence to convict, he's not guilty, right? If you're a lawyer, if you're a prosecutor, you may very well have a client who's innocent of the crime, but it's your job to argue the case that, he needs to go to jail, right? And that, rooting for your team is a big part of the American legal system. So if Donald Trump and his legal team and other people argued he was the legit winner of the election, and they knew he was not, that's probably not illegal. It's immoral. It's unethical. If they lied, if they fabricated evidence or anything like that, obviously that's illegal. But, you know, I mean, is that defrauding the country exactly? I mean, it's you know, I mean, it's almost like in sports, two teams, the coach will argue with the referee. I mean, they'll argue with the referee about what a foul is, and I mean, it raises some questions, honestly, right? It raises some questions for me. The legality. Now, there's obviously other charges. They claim Donald Trump incited and is responsible for the people going into the U.S. Capitol. So it's that's not the only aspect, but that aspect in particular, where they're alleging that they have texts or whatever that prove that Donald Trump knew the election was legit, that he lost. And from there, the argument is that he pretended he won anyway, and that was conspiracy to defraud the United States. And I not quite buying it myself. I'm having a hard time with that, right? Not quite buying the legality there. That's a big stretch of the law. And the other thing is, how do you prove Donald Trump really believed he lost, right? I mean, just because Donald Trump said to somebody, right, they got a text of him saying to somebody, okay, we lost. That doesn't mean he didn't change his mind afterwards. That doesn't mean he was telling the truth to that person about what he really believed in his heart. How can you prove what Donald Trump really believed in his heart? Especially when it's Donald Trump and he says so many goddamn contradictory things. How can you prove what he really believed deep down in his soul? You can't do that. So how are they going to, I mean, this is very messy, but the fact, I mean, I believe if Donald Trump is convicted, it's something like he could face like 539 years in prison. He will never see the light of day again. This was any other country, if Maduro was giving this treatment to opposition candidates or something, it'd be a huge amount of outrage. U.S. media would call it a dictatorship immediately. So, I look at this and it looks to me like we're going to have a pretty wild election. Now, we all know that one major factor in the 2020 elections, let me add, was the Hunter Biden laptop. Is that right before the election, Hunter Biden's laptop that was full of evidence of illegal activity and pictures of him smoking crack and images of him with prostitutes and business deals and all kinds of shady stuff that came to light. And the FBI went around to Facebook and Twitter and said, no, this is Russian propaganda. We're going to suppress it. No one's allowed to know about this. And now we know it was true. It was true the whole time. It was true the whole time. Hunter Biden's laptop was completely true, wasn't Russian propaganda. And the FBI knew it was true and knew it wasn't Russian propaganda. We now know this. So, I mean, if anyone is responsible for rigging the election, it would be the U.S. federal agencies that blatantly prevented a story that should have been a part of the news cycle in the lead up to the election from being widely discussed. And no one's been prosecuted for that. No one's going to jail for that. And that's been, at this point, proved without a shadow of a doubt. FBI knew Hunter Biden's laptop was real and went around to suppress it anyway. Former intelligence officials took out ads saying it was Russian propaganda. They had no evidence of that. The actual head of the Office of the Director of National Intelligence said they didn't think it was Russian propaganda. They thought it was true. Didn't matter. So, I mean, at this point, we're looking at a situation where, I mean, heading into the 2024 elections, this is going to be wild. Basically, we're going to get to vote on whether or not we want Kamala Harris to be president. And they are going to do everything they can to make sure that that is not what the conversation is about. But Republicans know that that's what the conversation is about. I know that that's what the conversation is about. I've been telling you that for the past 4 years. I wrote a book about Kamala Harris, for Christ's sakes. And that's really what's going on, is that Kamala Harris, they want her to be president. She will never win an election because she is an atrocious human being, and that comes across in all of her interactions. That comes across in her record as a vicious prosecutor. Kamala Harris has no place. She does not belong in the White House. I mean, she's just a deeply unstable individual with no sense of right and wrong whatsoever, with a desire for vengeance. She wants to make the world pay. You know, she feels that she's, you know, the world's been unfair to her and she just wants to make the world pay. And I've done a lot exposing who Kamala Harris really is. They want her, the deranged Kamala Harris, they want her in the White House. The only way they'll be able to get her in the White House is reelecting Joe Biden. And the only way they can reelect Joe Biden is for this election to be a clusterfuck, a 3-ring circus, a 12-ring circus, a 42-ring circus, which is what it's looking to become. Donald Trump is indicted. Cornel West is running for president. Cornel West is running for president. And so is RFK Jr. RFK Jr. says he will not run with Donald Trump. That's fake news. That's a conspiracy theory. This election is looking to be wild. Marianne Williamson is running for president. And this whole situation is spinning wildly out of control. So I've got another story I want to talk about tonight. But before we get to that, there's actually a small item that I just thought was classic. I do want to show this. It's going to take me a little bit to get the video here, right? I'm scrambling from one thing to another, right? We got the big protest coming up this weekend. And tomorrow, my wife and I were going to like a wedding ceremony thing and early in the morning. It's not a wedding ceremony. It's like a commitment ceremony thing. You know, 2 people that just got engaged. We're going to that, and that's going to be nice. And then after that, I'm going to something else. And it's like I barely have any time to breathe. And I'm trying to write this book I'm working on. You know, I'm trying to finish this book. I'm scrambling to finish this book. My deadline I've set for myself for this book is the end of August. So I'm trying to finish this book. And, you know, it's one thing. If it's not one thing, it's another thing. I'm scrambling to get so much done. And we got the big protest and the rally, and we got a morning message coming out every morning. I'm doing a lot these days, folks. I'm keeping busy, and I'm proud of myself for doing it. I really like doing everything I do, and you guys are worth it because you're an amazing community. And what we're doing here is really, really valuable and really, really important. So I'm glad to do it, but you know, just have to take a minute here to download this video really quickly. So hold on, hold your horses, folks, and wait for me to download this video. Download this video. All right. It's a short video. And it really tells you everything that you need to know. So, right. This is, yeah. All right. Here we go. All righty. Right. Just let me put it on the desktop. So, you know, this isn't really worth spending that much time on because it's not anything we don't know. But it's just like every so often, the people who hate us say, reveal just blatantly what they're really about. Yeah, this is Jabba the Vaush. This is him giving his analysis of the Cornel West campaign. Seriously, like this is not a doctored clip. This is not fake. Vaush was appearing with the guys from the show The Vanguard. And they asked him his opinion of the Cornel West campaign. And this is what he said. If I can just get the video to come up, this is what he said. You can't make this up. I mean, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's really something special. Let me just put it that way. It's really something special. If I can get it to come up here on the computer, All right. But yeah, I'm having trouble getting it to load the clip. But there we go. Okay. Just trying to get it to inload the clip here. Okay, so why is the clip not showing up? This is very annoying. Very annoying indeed. All righty. You know, I just sit here and I thought I would show this clip. Let's see if I can get the clip to upload. Yeah, it was certainly amusing. If not, I can play it the other way. Here we go. All right, here we go. This is Vaush on the Cornel West campaign.
You know, corporate politics bad. Both parties bad. You know who thinks corporate politics are bad? Nazis. They think the Jews run them.
Come on.
That's what he said about Cornel West.
He does his spiel, corporate politics bad, both parties bad.
Is there anything wrong with saying that? No. Corporate politics bad. Corporate politics bad. Both parties bad.
Who thinks corporate politics are bad? Nazis. They think the Jews run them.
Come on.
I mean, there you go. Anyone who says that corporations have too much power, anyone who's against both parties is a Nazi, is a white supremacist. Brilliant. I mean, how does anyone take this clown seriously? Right? I mean, that's now his argument, right? If you say both parties are bad, if you say corporate politics are bad, then what you mean is that they're secretly run by Jews and you're a Nazi. I mean, how do you argue with that, right? I mean, like, this is the dumbest bullshit we've ever heard. And this is what it means to be a leftist now, to be a Biden supporter, is everyone you disagree with is secretly somehow a Nazi, right? And they've done this. They think that RFK had 1488 in his post because the two numbers were both listed there. I mean, this is so dumb. So dumb, right? And this is what being a leftist has come to. Forget about economics. Forget about the struggle of the workers to seize the means of production. Forget about anti-imperialism. No. Being a leftist now means that you find the secret code through which everyone you disagree with is a big fat racist. That's what leftism is. Now, if you don't see why we should break with this kind of bullshit, I don't know what to tell you. But anyway, I want to tell you about another story. This is another story I'm going to tell you about. And this story, this takes the cake. I heard about this story and I died laughing. I died laughing reading this story, but I'm going to show you, I'm going to show you a couple clips from the story here. So this is in the New York Post. The story is rejected underage drinker hires protesters to smear luxury New York hotel with wild signs, says lawsuit. This is really funny. It is really, really hilarious. I'm going to pull up the picture of the guy. This story is one of the funniest stories I've read in a long time. All right. So this is it's a rich kid who lives in New York City, lives in Manhattan, wealthy New York City kid. And he tried to go to this restaurant, this very fancy restaurant called The Mark. He tried to go there and underage drink. I'll even pull up a picture of him. Hold on. This is the picture of the rich kid, right? This is the rich kid. He tried to go to this fancy restaurant called The Mark. It's a really fancy, classy restaurant in New York City called The Mark. That's the kid. His name is Theodore Weintraub. Right? Apparently his father is a doctor. He lives near there, East 77th Street, fancy, the Upper East Side. This is like super rich people. These are like millionaires. Okay. So, he's underage. You have to be 21 to drink alcohol in the United States, right? For those of you who maybe don't know that. In the United States, unless you're 21, you cannot consume alcohol. And a restaurant, if they serve you alcohol, they get fined a lot of money. Right. And they get fined a lot of money and they can lose their license. Right. If you are underage and you drink alcohol and you go out and get in a car accident afterwards, they can sue the restaurant for serving you the alcohol and they can destroy businesses over this. It's a pretty well enforced law in the United States. So Theodore Weintraub, his parents are probably millionaires. Right. His father's a doctor. He lives in the Upper East Side. Rich kid, right? Big fan of the New York Yankees too, I guess, because he's wearing the ball cap. He went to The Mark, which is this fancy restaurant down below here. A very expensive restaurant. Apparently, it costs $27 to order a martini at The Mark. I mean, it's a really expensive place. So Theodore, he went to The Mark, according to the article. He went to The Mark, and he tried to buy alcohol. And he would show them a fake ID. And they immediately recognized it as being a fake ID. So he did this. He tried to pull this a couple times. And they said, no, you can't. Nope. You can't come back here. They banned him from the restaurant. So about a year later, A year later, he went to the restaurant with his family, and they immediately recognized him on the way in. They said, nope, you can't come here. And he begged them. He said, come on, man, give me another chance. I'm just here with my parents. They said, nope, you can't come in. So Theodore took this very personally. And so he hired protesters to protest the mark with signs that said the mark is connected to Jeffrey Epstein. The mark denies the Holocaust. And the mark is infested with mice. And for months, he was paying protesters to stand outside of the restaurant with signs claiming that the restaurant was tied to Jeffrey Epstein, with signs claiming the restaurant were Holocaust deniers, and with signs claiming that the place was infested with mice. And apparently, like, this went on for months, and he would like find out when like big special events were happening and pay the protesters to be there, and so they're suing him, and they've gotten a restraining order. And I hear this story and I'm like, this is the stupid, I mean, it's hilarious, but it's sad. It's overwhelmingly sad, right? Yeah, the restaurant are Jew-hating pedo mice. Jew-hating, right? All combine them all into one, right? You got Epstein, you got anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial, and you got mice. Jew-hating pedo mice, right? I mean, this story is so, and like, this is what our culture has come to, right? I can swear, based on the insults, right, that he called them Holocaust deniers, that he called them Epstein connected. This guy is chronically online. And they insulted his honor by carding him and then not letting him come back a year later. They insulted his honor. This guy probably doesn't go out much. All right. And so he sits at home seething. I shall get my revenge. I shall get my revenge. And he just sits at home seething. What can I do? Yes, I'll hire protesters to. I mean, this is like. This is unbelievable. Right? I mean, and this is how the internet makes people crazy. Who would even think of something so stupid? Right? I mean, I'm glad he did this instead of like showing up and doing a mass shooting, because that wouldn't be funny. That would just be sad. A lot of people would die and all of that, right? A lot of times that's what angry young men do, right? Angry, socially isolated, chronically online young men, when they get their masculinity offended, their ego is hurt, they generally, in the United States, they get their automatic or semi-automatic gun and they show up and kill all their classmates, or they kill all the people at their college or whatever. So I'm glad he didn't do that, because that wouldn't be funny. That wouldn't be funny at all, right? I mean, there's nothing funny about killing a bunch of people, but this is just like asinine, right? It's just asinine, right? So now, like, he basically tried to cancel the restaurant. He was going to cancel the restaurant. And he was going to pay people to say they work for Jeffrey Epstein, to pay people to say that they deny the Holocaust, to pay people to stand outside with signs saying they're infested with mice, right? This is like, that was his great plan. So of course they're suing him for this, right? Because that's not legal. And so now this is in the New York media that he did this, right? So now, like, his name is all in the New York media because he's being sued for having done this. And I look at this and I feel like this is so much a sign of the times that we're living in. This is, I know, I've met people like this. I know people like this. They don't do anything. They just sit at home seething on their computers all the time. And that this is why you need like a real life community to be part of. This is why you need real people and real events and all of that, because it's just like, if you've got real people that you can connect with, if you're part of a group, you can get over shit like this. Right? But if you don't, if you just sit around on the internet all day seething about, I shall get my revenge. No, I mean, this is sad. It's very, very, very sad, right? I can't imagine how anyone even thinks of this, but I guess, again, if he walks by the restaurant every day, I guess he lives in the area, he sees them and thinks, those bastards wouldn't serve me alcohol. They embarrassed me when I tried to go there with my family. I shall get you. I shall get you. Right? And and he came up with this elaborate scheme. He's got, it's extremely sad, right? And this is what social media does to people's brains, right? Like, if he just had a normal circle of friends, if he just had a normal circle of friends he could hang out with, if he just had a normal social group to be part of. But the internet, right? If you're just alone and isolated and you're sitting on the internet all day long, this is what happens to your brain. Seriously, this is what this awful invention, this is what this does to your brain, right? It'd be one thing if this restaurant were like, if they, politically didn't agree with him, right? If he was like a big supporter of Palestine, and this was a Zionist restaurant, or if he was a big Zionist and this was a Palestinian restaurant, or, if he was really against abortion and this was like a pro-abortion restaurant. But this is over a personal slight, which it sounds like he was in the wrong for. He repeatedly went there with a fake ID. All right. He was in the wrong pretty clearly going to this super expensive fancy restaurant. He was in the wrong. He multiple times went there and tried to get them to do something that if they did, they would be legally liable. He looks like he could be a cop, right? Obviously he's not, but, and just based on that, he spent years seething and developing this elaborate scheme for revenge. This is really sad. This is really, really, really sad. This is just stupid. It's stupid and it's sad. And, it's really stupid and it's really, really sad. And it's like, this is what our culture has been reduced to. Right. And that there's a whole, this is what internet cancel culture is, right? If you don't like somebody, you call them a pedo. If you don't like somebody, you call them a rapist. You say they're connected to Jeffrey Epstein. If you had said anything else about them, I wouldn't blame this on the internet. But the fact that it was Epstein, the fact that it was denying the Holocaust, I'm sorry. This guy's chronically online, and this is what the internet does. This is what the internet does to people. And I just wanted to talk about that. I just wanted to highlight this case because this is, this is really sad, and this is like, again, he must be quite wealthy, right? Because, hiring people to protest a place is not a cheap thing to do, right? I don't know where one would start, I don't know how one would find people who would stand in front of a restaurant for pay like that. This is really stupid. This is really, really a stupid case. So I just wanted to highlight that. This is American culture. This is where we're at as a society. This is the level that we're at. And I think, honestly, there are people I've met who are like this, right? And they sit around stewing in their resentment all day long, right? And it's just no, it wasn't fair. And it's just, there you go. It reminds you of Moby Dick. Have you ever read Moby Dick, the classic novel by Herman Melville? Herman Melville, his novel Moby Dick tells the story of Captain Ahab, who's a whaler, right? He's a captain on a whaling ship, and there's this big, huge whale called Moby Dick, and Moby Dick, the big, huge whale, crippled him, right? Broke one of his legs, and so he spends his life determined to take down Moby Dick. And in the process, if he had just moved on with his life, he he could have had a better life, but instead he spends his life trapped in this negativity, in this fit of revenge. He spends his life desperately trying to destroy this white whale, Moby Dick. You know, I mean, this is sad. It's very, very sad. You know, and there you go. There you go. So I just wanted to share that story with people. But yeah, folks, you know, the protests on Sunday are going to be very important. I really hope to see you there. They're going to be very important. Center for Political Innovation. We're going to have a very important, you know, contingent at the protests in different parts of the country. That's going to be important. I'm working on a new book, the contents of which will surprise you, I believe. You know, they attacked the Kerch Bridge. Did you see that? You know, they attacked the Kerch Bridge, the Crimea Bridge, once again. You know, this is yet another attack on the Crimea Bridge. And you know, the last attack, we understand, based on what Seymour Hersh revealed, that it had to have been a U.S.-made drone to go under the water and then above the ground. So the last attack on the Kerch Bridge had to have been a U.S.-made drone. And so it appears that even though Ukraine has no chance at this point of winning the war, they have, you know, all the territory Russia wants, Russia's already got. Russia's not interested in seizing Kiev. They don't want to do that. They just want to protect the people of the eastern regions. They want security guarantees that Kiev isn't going to join NATO or acquire nuclear weapons or anything like that. So at this point, you know, the Donbass regions, Donetsk, Lugansk, Crimea, they're staying with Russia. They voted to join with Russia. They're well fortified. They're not leaving. The counteroffensive was a total flop. And so now Ukraine, the American government is just piling loads and loads of money into Ukraine. Then Ukraine is carrying out drone strikes on the Russian capital. Thank you, Deborah. Shout out to Deborah Wilson. Deborah Wilson's awesome. You know, she's really, really great. I got to meet you in Los Angeles. It was really, really great. You're great, Deborah. And thank you for your support. You know, but, you know, I mean, they carry out drone strikes against Moscow, right? They're attacking the financial district in Moscow. They're attacking the Kerch Bridge, but they have no chance in hell of winning the war. They are never going to win the war. Not going to happen at this point. And America knows it. The American intelligence knows it. The Pentagon knows it. So what the hell are we doing in Ukraine? Right? I mean, and why the hell won't the Ukrainian leaders just negotiate a peace, negotiate a truce? Right? I mean, at this point, there's nothing. All these lives are being thrown away at this point. Ukraine is not going to get what it, I mean, it's not going to get Crimea back. It's not going to get Donetsk back. It's not going to get Lugansk back. You know, I mean, it's over. So all this money is just being piled and piled into Kiev. And all these weapons are being unloaded. And people are dying around the clock. And Ukraine is being turned into a graveyard. And, you know, I mean, it's just the whole place is just being destroyed. I mean, at this point, you have to ask, okay, fine, you don't like Russia, right? And I always get this, oh, you like Putin, Caleb. I do like Putin. Oh, you think Russia's right. I do think Russia is right. But pretend I don't, right? Pretend that you think Russia is evil, you blah, blah, blah. Okay. But at this point, what would be the point? Right? Let's accept that you think Russia's bad. Russia should never have gone in. They did it for purely selfish reasons, blah, 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 blah. The whole story that we hear in American media, which isn't true. But pretend, even if that were true, what would be the point at this? I mean, what is being gained here? This is a cynical, evil, manipulative operation. What do you think of Austro-Marxism? That's a Rumble rant that came in from Anoan. I'm writing it down. Thank you, Anoan, for your Rumble rant, putting it on the list. What do you think of Austro-Marxism? You know, and it's completely pointless at this point. America is wasting its money. Lives are being wasted on the battlefield. Ukraine is becoming even less arable, right? I mean, the bullets at this point, they've got depleted uranium on them, which makes it much harder for crops to grow. There's going to be depleted uranium in the soil of Ukraine, and it's going to be really hard for crops to grow. Who is gaining from this in any conceivable way? This whole situation, it's awful. But let me just throw this out there. Just throwing this out there because it's worth it, right? I've been covering the UN Security Council. Right? That's my job. I'm a reporter. I've been covering the UN meetings. And yesterday, I believe, Antony Blinken came to the United Nations and pounded the podium. Pounded the podium against Russia because of the Black Sea grain deal. Right? Because Russia pulled out of the Black Sea grain deal. Right? This was a deal that as the war was going on, all these sanctions piled on Russia, that Russia could keep exporting grain and Ukraine could also keep exporting their grain. It was part of their deal. And the ports that were being used under the deal that Ukraine was allowed to keep open, that Russia agreed not to mess with, were being used to launch attacks on Crimea. And the ammonia pipeline, ammonia is key in fertilizer. Ukraine was told, as part of the deal, they should open the ammonia pipeline. They never opened it. And so at this point, I mean, after months and months, Russia said, you know what? If you're going to keep using the ports that are allowed under this deal for military operations against us, which you're not supposed to do, if you're going to not open the ammonia pipeline, which was part of the deal, we're pulling out of the deal. So Russia pulled out of the grain deal. Now, the USA is accusing Russia of starving the world. All right. Well, first of all, it's been pointed out most of the grain that went through the Black Sea grain deal wasn't going to Africa. Most of it was going to Spain and European Union countries. So even under the deal, it wasn't going to the people in the third world. Second, Russia just announced it's giving grain to all the African countries that have missed out on grain, absolutely free delivery even. So no one in Africa is going to miss out on grain because of this. But regardless of all of this, Antony Blinken got up at the UN Security Council and talked about how people are starving in Haiti and people are starving in Yemen. And it's all Russia's fault because Russia pulled out of the Black Sea grain deal. Right? Russia pulled out of the Black Sea grain deal. People are starving in Yemen. People are starving in Haiti, and it's Russia's fault. Well, the war in Yemen, the United States has been arming Saudi Arabia, has been directing Saudi Arabia's military operations, and Saudi Arabia has been engaging in a food blockade. So people are starving in Yemen. I was on a boat full of grain trying to get to Yemen. And Saudi Arabia blew up the port where we were supposed to deliver the food to get there. And the United States backs arms and supports Saudi Arabia. So people are starving in Yemen, and it's not because Russia pulled out of a deal that wasn't being fulfilled by the United States. It's because the United States has been arming Saudi Arabia for year after year after year in order to kill the Yemeni people. Haiti. People are starving in Haiti because NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, put all the Haitian farmers out of business, right? Haitians used to grow their own food. They used to be food self-sufficient. And then NAFTA, an American agribusiness, went into Haiti and put them all out of business. Now they have to import their food from the United States, and they're a lot poorer than they used to be. And it's a corrupt U.S.-backed regime. The USA toppled President Aristide when he was moving in an anti-imperialist direction in 2004. When he was a friend of Hugo Chavez, they've installed pro-U.S. regimes in Haiti. The people are hungry and starving. And yeah, I mean, it's directly because of the United States, right? So for him to get up there and blame Russia for people starving in Yemen after the USA has kept that war going and allowed Saudi Arabia to use food as a weapon in Yemen, after the United States has destroyed the agricultural sector of Haiti and overthrown the Haitian government back in 2004, it's pretty ridiculous. But it gets even more ridiculous, right? Because they're claiming that because of Russia, because of this Russian war, people won't have the food. Folks, go and look this up. It sounds too stupid to be true. But I talk about it in my new book. It's actually in chapter 1 because it's very relevant to explaining the problem that we're in. But in chapter 1 of my new book, one of the things that I cite is the fact that there is 1.5 billion, not million, billion pounds of cheese in a cave in Springfield, Missouri. There's a refrigerated cave. Not just a cave that is refrigerated. In Springfield, Missouri, that has 1.5 billion pounds of cheese in it. It also has 355 million pounds of butter, and it has 211 million pounds of pecans. Why? To make the price of dairy and agricultural products go up, to deal with the problem of overproduction. Read about this, right? Google it right now. Cave in Springfield, Missouri, cheese in a cave, right? Cheese in a cave. As part of the U.S. program of keeping the price of agricultural goods up in order to subsidize agribusiness, to prevent the problem of overproduction, the U.S. government has billions of pounds of food just sitting in a refrigerated cave in Missouri. And that's not the only place that they have all kinds of food. So if they really cared about these Yemenis, and they really cared about these Haitians, and they were just, oh my God, they're going to starve now because Russia pulled out of the Black Sea grain deal, all they'd have to do is load up a U.S. aircraft carrier full of that food and deliver it right there to Haiti, deliver it right. I mean, there's all kinds of food sitting around the United States in refrigerated caves that people could eat, but they don't do anything with it. So this idea that Russia is responsible for people being hungry is completely ridiculous. It is completely ridiculous. Right? The U.S. government buys pounds and pounds of food and buries it. It buys pounds and pounds of milk and just dumps it out in order to keep the price of food high so that the American agribusiness corporations can make better profits. Right? You can Google this. I'm not making it up. This is a fact, and it's because of the problem of overproduction. Right? The tendency of the falling rate of profit, overproduction. Right? People go hungry in capitalism because there is too much food. And the American agricultural sector has this problem. And the U.S. government has done all kinds of crazy things to inflate the price of agricultural products. And there's loads of food in the United States that just gets buried, that just gets dumped out, and all of this. So for them to say, oh my God, because of Russia, it's all Russia's fault. They created the food crisis in Haiti. They created the food crisis in Yemen. They broke the Black Sea grain deal, didn't open the ammonia pipeline, used the very ports that were kept open under the deal to attack Crimea. How in the world is this Russia's fault? Right? For them to blame this on Russia. But the sinister thing about all of this, I don't know if you know this, but all over the world right now, in the name of fighting climate change, BlackRock, the American government, all the Biden people, people call them woke capital, the social engineers, are trying to reduce the global agricultural and crop output. The U.S. government currently has a program. They started in 1985 where they pay farmers not to grow food on arable land. If you're a farmer and you have a certain amount of arable land, the U.S. government will basically rent it from you, and you'll get a check in the mail not to grow food. And there's 211 million acres of land in the United States that is completely arable. Right? And farmers own it, and they get a check in the mail from the American government not to grow their food. Joe Biden is expanding this program because he says that agriculture contributes to climate change. So right now, the American government is working really, really hard to reduce crop output so that American farmers produce less food. Meanwhile, BlackRock went to Sri Lanka. In order for Sri Lanka to be financed, they had to transition to organic, and their crop output was dramatically less, and there was a food crisis in Sri Lanka. They are actively at this point trying to reduce the amount of food in the world to save capitalism. This is called Malthusianism. This is called degrowth, right? That there's too much stuff, right, being produced. And so to save capitalism, we're going to reduce consumption. We're going to reduce the population. We're going to reduce consumption. You're going to be poorer. You're going to own nothing, and you're going to love it. That is what global capitalism has in the works. This is called fascism. This is fascist economics. This is Nazi economics. This is the economics of Holomer Schacht. This is the economics of the Third Reich. This is the economics of the British Empire. This is neo-Malthusianism, right? That capitalism is reaching a crisis of overproduction. So we solve it by grinding everyone into poverty. We create a slave labor underclass. We reduce the population. We start, encouraging people we consider to be inferior not to have children. We start breeding people like animals with eugenics. This is Nazi economics. This is sinister, evil, satanic Malthusianism that's being pushed by the ultra-rich to save their system. And R. Palm Dutt wrote a book explaining this kind of economic practice. It's called Fascism and Social Revolution. This is a great Marxist book from the 1930s. Explains this is what fascism is. Fascism is attempting to save capitalism by grinding populations into poverty, by militarizing the economy, by creating a slave labor underclass. Nazi economics. And that's what our ruling class is doing right now. They are utilizing Nazi economics to try and save capitalism. Well, I maintain that the solution is a government of action that will fight for working families. The solution is mobilizing and creating an anti-monopoly coalition to fight, to restructure the American economy, to serve the needs of the people, not the profits of a wealthy few. We need a government of action to fight for working families. That's what I've been putting forward on these streams. That's what the Center for Political Innovation is about. We are building a network, a community of solidarity, of people who are committed to these ideas, who are pro-growth and pro-humanity. And we're organizing, we're growing, we're expanding. These are great times, great times. So thanks, everybody, for all that you do. And why don't we now have our roll call? Who's with us tonight? Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Who's with us? Who's with us, right? Who is with us? Names and locations. That includes the Rumble folks, too, right? Call out your name and location, and I will recognize you. Who is with us tonight? Who is with us? We got Rice in Adelaide, Australia. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So glad to have you. We got Lawrence in Chicago, Lawrence Johnson. Welcome, Lawrence. I believe there's going to be a protest in Chicago. We got Jonathan C. in Los Angeles. There's going to be a protest tomorrow in Los Angeles, too. Temple City, California. Sue in Hollywood. Jonathan C., StarCraft, fellow New Yorker. Jamie, Temple City, California. Bendigo, Australia. Jenny Lynn. Ryan in Kansas City. Timoshenko in St. Louis. Tony in Tasmania. Grange over Sands, right? Balthazar in Oakland. Lily in Costa Rica. Brendan in Palo Alto, California. Mima in Central California. Alexis from Montreal. Anthony in Quebec. Deb in Napa Valley. Welcome, Deb. Glad to have you here. Briggy in Pennsylvania. Hanson got a free. There you go. Steve and Ann in North Georgia. Bob Troy in New York. Rogue Valley, Oregon. The Gribble Report. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Alec in Los Angeles. Oslo, Norway. Truth Teller in Canada. Jamie in St. Paul, Minnesota. Alec from Los Angeles. Very, very good. Very, very, very good. Northwestern, Lower Michigan, A Better America. Jamie in St. Paul. Neil Fraser in Hong Kong. Shout out to you, Neil. Good to have you. Micah in Las Vegas. Christopher in Texas. Jenny Lynn in Cincinnati. Cleveland Pirate Alex. Paus from Catalonia, Spain. Glad to have you all with us tonight. Good times. Good times. Anybody? Oh, we got James in Boise, Idaho. James in Boise, Idaho is watching. He's on the Rumble. Rumble rants are accepted. Rumble rants are accepted. So I'm going to answer the first thing I'll answer will be the Rumble rant. Someone asked me what Austro-Marxism is. Now, I don't exactly know, but I'm not going to Google it. I am going to give you my two estimates, my two guesses as to what Austro-Marxism might be. And if somebody knows better than me or somebody wants to Google it, they can tell me whether I got it right. These are my two best guesses. When people talk about Austro-Marxism, my guess, I've never heard the term before, but my guess about what those two things might be is this. My first guess is that this is the folks who believe that Marxism and Austrian school economics, libertarianism can walk hand in hand. That's, I believe, the Jehu community that is like fighting with the Haas community or is part of the Haas community that believes that, that socialism should purely be voluntary and you need vast abundance and that somehow we can have total unregulated free markets and create the ultimate goal of communism. That's my estimate, right? Is it's an attempt to argue that we can somehow get to the ultimate goal of communism with Austrian economics. That's my first guess. My second guess is that it is a form of revisionism, right? Because Edward Bernstein, who was a prominent Marxist intellectual leader of the Second International, broke away and started the revisionist school of Marxism. He was very popular in Austria. He's the one who coined the slogan, "The movement is everything, the goal is nothing." And the Austrian Marxists, the Austrian Social Democrats, I should say, were notoriously reformist. So those are my two guesses, that it's either a reformist social democracy or it is this new Jehu libertarian stuff. What is it? What is it? Let's Google it, right? I don't see anyone speaking up in the chat about it. Austro-Marxism. What is it? What is Austro-Marxism? Austro-Marxism, it was a Marxist theoretical current led by Victor Adler, of course, Adler, right? Otto Bauer. Yeah, I was right. It was my second guess, which was that it was a form of revisionism, right? That's Adler. That, it's a form of social democracy, form of revisionism, right? The Austrian Marxists of the Second International were notoriously reformist and revisionist. I was right, and David Fox was right. The Jehu people, that's another thing. They don't openly embrace the Austrian school. That's a different thing. So I was right. My second guess. I should have followed my instinct, right? But I assumed there was something new under the sun, that I wasn't hip, some kind of new term I wasn't familiar with. But I should have trusted my instinct and said it was Bernstein revisionism. It was a wing of European social democracy in the Second International. There we go. It was a wing of reformist Marxism in the Second International. Very good. All right. And so now we are going to start answering people's super chat questions. Jason Hunt asked me, please explain Lenin's combination of production with examples of U.S. corporation. I don't know the concept. Jason. And you asked me a lot of intense inside baseball questions, and I'm not recalling Lenin's concept of combination of production. So, I'm not going to bullshit to you, Jason. If I don't know something, I will tell you, and this I do not know. Right. And, you ask, I will say, I appreciate the super chats. I appreciate you asking questions, but a lot of times you're asking me questions that are very obscure. And, is it like you're trying to own me or something? Last night you're asking me about the definition of Bonapartism that somebody used, and was it based on somebody else's definition? I don't know. Maybe. So there you go. All right. I just don't know. I don't know enough about the concept, Jason. All right. It's a shame that all their energy cannot be used for revolutionary change and said. Yeah. And, to be fair, though, you know what the whole thing with the PlayStation riot reminded me of? It reminded me of early during Occupy Wall Street, like the first week of Occupy Wall Street, the second week, the way that they filled up Union Square, or it wasn't Union Square, the way they filled up Zuccotti Park was they spread a rumor all over Facebook, all over social media, that Radiohead was playing a free concert in Zuccotti Park. It was false, but it was a way to generate a crowd. And that, look, in order for this Kai Cenat figure to have generated the crowd that he generated, they had to make it go viral. And that's why I'm suspicious that this is some kind of operation. Because, look, if I tweet, if Caleb, if I tweeted that I was going to be in Union Square and I was going to be giving away free PlayStations, no one would show up. I mean, I'm just telling you the truth, right? I've got 24,000 followers on this channel. I've got, 9,000 followers on Twitter. I mean, maybe 10 people might show up. Maybe, 5 people would show up. But this guy is somebody who apparently is a very famous Twitch streamer, very famous Twitch comedian, and they made it, boom, go viral. I'm just telling you, people want to look at this and they want to say, oh, this is just how material and shallow people are. No, this is how manipulated social media is, right? They decide who goes viral and who doesn't, right? And that doesn't just apply to pro-imperialist voices. They decide what anti-imperialist voices go viral. Folks, I can guarantee you that I would have a much bigger social media if I was on here and I was not building a real organization like I am with the Center for Political Innovation. I was not trying to do anything real. And if I was on here, just on here talking about how awful America is, right? If I was doing what Danny Haiphong does for a living and calling America just an evil place and calling Americans evil racists, right? And I never organized anything, was never part of any movement. I just tore the country down, just made people pessimistic, made people hopeless, right? Or if I was on here and I was making fun of trans people and calling people faggots and stuff like that, my social media would be much bigger. That is not what God has called me to do, right? That is not what I would feel in the right doing. I am here to build an organization. I am here to build a movement, an in real life movement to oppose the march toward fascism and the low wage police state and the danger of a new world war. It is my responsibility to make you feel optimistic and to get you to do something about it, get you to actually mobilize to change the world. That is what I am supposed to do. That is my understanding of what the right thing, what right and wrong is supposed to be, right? That is what one should do. And, even if someone is anti-imperialist, right? It's still, they have selected certain people to be the voices of anti-imperialism, people who don't organize anything and people who are utterly pessimistic, right? And I could name names and I could just burn bridges with every single one of them. And it doesn't benefit me to do that. So I mean, there's certain names that we talk about on here quite a bit, but there's other folks that we don't, but you'll notice anyone who blows up and becomes a big anti-imperialist on the internet, right? They're just a big, big anti-imperialist. Even if they say stuff about Russia and China we agree with, they're pessimistic. They're pessimistic. They're hopeless. They're not trying to change the world. They're not trying to make the world a better place. They're insulting people, and you'll notice that, right? None of them are doing what we are doing. What we are doing is really, really special. We are trying to build an in real life community. And that is why we've been so viciously attacked over the years. Viciously, right? I mean, they have come at me with everything, right? They have pulled their knives out and they've come at me so viciously because we're doing something real here. We make people feel optimistic. We make people feel hopeful. We try to get people to do some real shit. And that is what they're afraid of. They don't want optimism, right? You're just sitting there going, America's an evil country. It's racist. It's sexist. It's homophobic. All the people here are a bunch of evil, racist animals. They don't mind that. Right. If you're on here, just being a dude bro bully and calling people faggots and homos and, and making people feel bad and, they don't care about that. But if you're on here actually trying to bring people together, actually trying to bring people in building a real community, you're trying to make people feel hopeful, like they can actually intervene in history and get something done. If they do that, you're a threat to the real order. I mean, you are. I mean, look, go and listen every morning to our morning messages from the Center for Political Innovation. The morning messages are great, and we are building a real community. And the real community is not for everybody, right? And a lot of people have just been so badly damaged by the social media programming and manipulation. They're not ready for it, and they won't be able to do it. And then that's fine. Be gone. Be gone, right? We don't need you, right? But we are trying to build a ship because the storm is coming. The storm is on the horizon. The storm is coming. The storm is on the horizon. And we are trying to build a community of people who can intervene when we hit strategic equilibrium, when the crisis intensifies, who can intervene effectively to get good things done, to make a better country for working families. Right? And the moment could very easily arise. We are living in a time where the moment could arise. But it requires people to be able to work together, to put aside their differences and get stuff done. And that's what we're trying to do. And that's not sexy. And that's not, that's not as entertaining. And that is also, something that will get us more persecution from the powers that be. But it must be done. It must be done. It must be done. It is the urgency of the moment that somebody do what the Center for Political Innovation is doing. And, that's why we need you to join if you're the kind of person who's up for it. And if you're not up for it, please, by all means, don't. But we have a job to do. We care about getting that job done, and we need your help doing that job. And it's not, we're here to inspire people. We're here to make people feel good about themselves. We're here to empower people. We're here to teach people an ideology. And, there's a lot of other voices that are just pushing pessimism. There's a lot of other voices that are just pushing negativity, just tearing people down. That's not what we're about here. We're about building. We're about constructing. All righty. Critical support for the youth and their people's democratic struggle against the NYPD. Fish can't leave the water. No melons leave the vine. PS5s are the rising sun. That second part is a reference to, I guess that's a little bit of an inside baseball message, right? The second part, right? That is a reference to sailing the seas depends on the helmsman, right? That's one of the famous songs of the Chinese communists, right? I love Chinese communist music, right? The one of the most popular songs of the Mao era was "Sailing seas depends on the helmsman. Grass and trees depend on the sun. Rain and dew, they nourish the crops. Making revolution requires Mao Zedong thought. And fishes need the water, and melons need the vine. The masses must be guided by the Communist Party line. Mao Zedong thought is the sun that forever shines." Right? Now, you wouldn't get the reference, right, if you're not familiar with it. That's, yes, fish can't leave the water, nor melons leave the vine. The masses must be guided by the Communist Party line. Mao Zedong thought is the sun that forever shines. PS5s are the shining sun. That was a little bit of a joke from Max the Sax, which we appreciate your humor. And I mean, as far as their people's democratic struggle against the NYPD, look, look, I'm certainly a white dude. I am a white dude if there ever was one. I'm like the whitest dude you ever met. And, I don't know what it's like to be a young black person, or especially a young black male, and deal with the police. I will never have that experience, right? And I can imagine that the resentment that a lot of these young men felt is based on the fear, the intimidation, the bullying, the brutality that they endure in their lives. They were assembled in the square because they thought they were going to get a free PlayStation, and the police, for whatever reason, tried to break it up, and that resentment came out, right? And I'm not here to say that resentment is wrong, and I'm not here to judge them, and I'm not here to say that what they did, they should be condemned for it. I'm not sure I would call it a people's democratic struggle against the NYPD, but, is it based on real horror that these young men have to deal with, real fears that they have to grow up with, real anger and resentment at the way the police treat young black men in New York City and around the country? Absolutely. Right. Do I encourage people to act the way they acted today? Probably not. Did it really accomplish very much? Not really. But, I'm not here to condemn them, right? I'm not here. And I saw racist comments. I was deleting all kinds of racist comments as soon as I posted the video. And that's reprehensible, right? And look, and one thing I will say is that in New York City, if you have any event where there's a big crowd, the way the police set it up is so annoying and obnoxious. The way the police set up the events, it's like it takes you forever to get from one end of the cage to another. And there's so many checkpoints, and it's the crowd control mechanisms in New York. Maybe somebody can try and convince me they're necessary for public safety. They're annoying as hell is what they are. They're annoying as hell. And so these young men assembled and the police tried to crowd control them, and it blew up. Right now, I'm sticking with my original theory. That I believe that this was some kind of psyop to justify a crackdown on protesters. And a crackdown on public gatherings, and a crackdown on social media promotion of public gatherings. That's what I am arguing. But we shall see. All right. Characteristics of small, medium, and big bourgeoisie. I've never talked about. What does this mean, Jason? Right? You asked me some wild questions, right? Right? In Marxism, there is what they call the petty bourgeoisie, and it's from French. It means like the petite bourgeoisie, the small capitalist, right? Those are the small business owners. Those are the, local bars, local restaurants. That's what the term petty bourgeois refers to. Now, as far as medium bourgeois, I've never heard of anyone who talks about medium bourgeois. I've never heard anyone refer to that. And the big bourgeoisie refers to the actual ruling class, the people that actually have the power, that actually make the money, that actually control the means of production. That's who the big bourgeoisie generally refers to. It means the bulk of the ruling class. And small bourgeoisie refers to the middle class, people that, in terms of their relationship to the means of production, they're not wage workers. They are business owners, right? They own their own means of production. They own their own store. They're a doctor. They own their own practice. They're a lawyer that has their own practice. That's what petty bourgeois generally refers to, meaning that they are technically owners of means of production, but they don't have any real power. Big bourgeoisie refers to the millionaires and billionaires that actually run society. And that's not related to my theory of big capital and little capital, right? That's all big bourgeoisie that I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the petty bourgeoisie. I'm talking about, among the big bourgeoisie, you have the ultra monopolies, and then you have what I call the lower levels of capital, which is people that are in the bourgeoisie, in the big bourgeoisie, but are not part of the club. They're not part of the social engineering apparatus. And if you talk about the Rockefellers, the DuPonts, and the Carnegies, you talk about the Silicon Valley tech monopolists, there's an entrenched group of power, the woke capital, you can call them. And then there's a lot of people in the big bourgeoisie, a lot of millionaires, a lot of billionaires who just want to make money, right? So that's kind of my understanding there. So there you go. And keep the super chats rolling in, folks, right? I've only got 2 more to read. So if you got more things you want me to talk about, by all means, send me more super chats or Rumble rants, right? I see in the Rumble chat, we got Dora 24 and St. David's and all of that. I already answered Nolan's first super chat. So if you want to send any more, keep me talking, right? This stream will keep going as long as I got super chats to answer. So yeah, I've got 2 more here to answer. Thank you, Deborah, for your contribution. Greatly appreciated. So the next question comes from Timoshenko. And Timoshenko asks me, according to Newsweek, 31% of eligible voters support U.S. troops being sent to Ukraine. 31% of eligible voters don't understand the implications of that, right? 31% is not a majority by any means, but if they really understood the implications of that, if there's a direct confrontation between Russian troops and U.S. troops, at that point, all of NATO is under the treaty is obligated to go to war at that point. So all the NATO countries then have to go to war with Russia. And, at that point, we got nukes going off. At that point, get a fallout shelter. The people who say that, right? I'm sure what that's based on is that they saw on TV that Russia is bad. They want America to go and protect the Ukrainians from Putin because that's what they saw on TV. But I don't think they really understand what that means, right? I really don't think they understand what that means, Tim, because, it's one thing for the USA to invade Iraq in 2004, but, the implications here of that, they don't understand of how that could really spill out into chaos. They really don't understand that. So they really don't. They really don't. That is my understanding. So, yeah. Now, how did Austrian economic thought originate? It originated during the lead up to World War I and the aftermath of World War I. You had the increased financialization of capital. Right, you had the rise of imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism that Lenin talked about. Imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism. Capitalism was concentrating more and more into the hands of the ultra monopolies, and these ultra monopolies were, centralizing their power. And you had many industrialists who resented the power of banks and resented the intrusion of government into the economy, and argued that somehow this was not genuinely capitalism. They liked the Gilded Age. They liked the free market more. And they resented the power of big banks. In the United States, you had the Federal Reserve that came into existence. J.P. Morgan, worked to create the Federal Reserve in the early 1900s. And you had increasingly capital being concentrated under the control of financialization. But among industrial capitalists, you had a level of nostalgia. And at the same time, they had nostalgia for the more competitive industrial capitalism era. You also had the labor movement. And you had communism and Marxism arising, workers going on strike and seizing their factories. And so you had a layer of capitalists who did not like the big banks and did not like the financialization and the increased, monopolistic power of certain corporations and the involvement of the government in facilitating this monopolization. But they also really hated communists and labor unions because they were talking about seizing the means of production. They were forcing them to sign union contracts and pay their workers better wages. They were forcing governments to pass legislation. They were forcing all of that. And as a result of all of that, they developed a school of thought that reflected their class position. They opposed the big banks. They opposed the ultra monopolies, but they really opposed the labor movement. They really opposed the labor movement and the labor unions and socialism. And you had Bastiat in France, who was a thinker that was associated with them, Bastiat. And you had Ludwig von Mises and others. And fascism came later, right? This was before you had fascism. Before you had the rise of fascism, you had the rise of these free marketeer capitalists. And they never really had a mass base among the population. They had a lot of capitalists who liked to hear what they had to say. They liked to hear what they had to say, and they paid for their work, but there weren't like thousands and thousands of people piling into Ludwig von Mises rallies and things like that. That wasn't happening. What's interesting, though, is that as fascism developed, first in Italy and then eventually in Nazi Germany, Ludwig von Mises and Friedrich von Hayek and people like that became much more, they were sympathetic with fascism because they saw it as the answer to the greatest danger, communism. And so there are many statements made by Ludwig von Mises and Friedrich von Hayek where they say, well, fascism is no good. They're against fascism because it's collectivist, because it involves the government. It creates a mass movement. But at least they're not the bloody communists. And they're probably the only hope we got against the goddamn communists, so we support them, right? And that's the origin of that kind of thought, right? And by the mid-1930s, no one talked that way. I mean, they were completely out of favor. Because, the whole reason that communism arose as a mass movement, the whole reason that fascism arose as a mass movement was because the free market wasn't working, right? And communists were one solution. Fascism was another solution. But if everything had been randy dandy, the Great Depression never would have happened, right? In the 1920s, they would say Ford has defeated Marx. He's developed this new, more efficient, mechanized form of capitalism, but that was all forgotten, right? Once the 1930s depression hit, everyone knew that the government needed to take some kind of action to make people's lives better. Everyone understood that. You know, people were desperate, people were hungry, people were unemployed. There was a feeling we have to have the government do something. The question is, what does the government do? Well, the fascists have their solution. Communists had their solution. And communists and fascists were the most extreme. Communists say mobilize the state to build. Fascists say mobilize the state to destroy and oppress. And they both, they fought it out, right? And the communists expanded their influence during the Great Depression. Various fascist movements arose during the Great Depression, which had a variety of different beliefs, but all in essence wanted to stabilize U.S. capitalism by creating a slave labor underclass, by deeply impoverishing people. So there you go. What was the first real color revolution? That's a good question, James. That's a very, very good question. And it would be hard to say. I argue that the color revolution playbook was developed over the course of the Cold War, right? And that you can see aspects of it in different places. Hungary in 1956, it was not exactly a color revolution. It was an uprising against the Soviet Union, against a Soviet-aligned government. It was it was supported in American media and cheerleaded. And it did attempt to get left-wing support, right? The Trotskyites supported it. They claimed that they were socialists also, that they were just against the socialism, the evil Stalinism, right? There was an attempt to court support from leftists, but there was a huge amount of fascists involved in it as well. A lot of fascist, folks were involved as well. But it was kind of a color revolution. The Prague Spring of 1968 was much closer to the color revolution aesthetic than I think we've ever seen before. That point, because Prague Spring, they made a really big point of having hippies take center stage, right? Dubček took power in Czechoslovakia. He was calling himself a democratic socialist, socialism with a human face. And then they got all these long-haired, Beatles-listening young people that were the children of the party elite to be out there going, oh, it's awful. And they filmed the Soviet tanks rolling in. And that was a much more precise application of the color revolution formula. And they made a point in the United States of having the hippie counterculture support the Prague Spring. And I think that that's the important thing. At the time the Prague Spring protests were going on, the Democratic National Convention was happening in Chicago. And a lot of young people were protesting the Democratic National Convention because they were nominating a pro-war candidate, Hubert Humphrey, and not the anti-war candidate Eugene McCarthy, and RFK had been assassinated. And they made a big point of, during the very violent and crazy, chaotic, a lot of police repression, the Chicago 7 trial comes out of that. During that chaotic event, they made a big point of organizing a very big protest against the Soviet mission in Chicago, and taking the young people that had been protesting the Democrat National Convention to protest against the Soviet Union. And they really tried on American media and television to show the young people being beaten up outside the Democrat convention and the young people in Prague who were getting run over by tanks or whatever. They really tried to equate the two of them, right? So that was much more the color revolution formula. The Prague Spring, I think you could argue, Prague Spring was a much closer attempt, right? The Hungary thing, they played up Hungarian nationalism. They did try to court leftists a little bit, but that wasn't the biggest part of it. The main thrust was Hungarian nationalism, anti-communism, right? David Irving, the neo-Nazi, he wrote a book about it, The Hungarian Tragedy, hailing the Hungarian Revolt of 1956, etc. But Prague Spring was the beginning of it. But they didn't have a color, right? The reason they call it a color revolution, this is kind of the brilliance of a color revolution, is that a color revolution, what is it about? Nothing. It's just about a color, right? And in all these countries, they make it a color, and people just wear this color to support the revolution. It's orange, it's green, it's purple. You know, they just make it about a color, right? And everybody in the world can project their grievances onto it. And all of a sudden, the memo gets sent out. If you're mad about anything in this country, go and assemble at this square or whatever, and that's the place to be. And so all the dissidents, anyone who's mad about anything, religious fanatics, hardline communists, feminists, anybody, conservative, it becomes just a free for all of anybody. Anybody projects what they want onto it. Usually there's a word, right? In China in 1989, it was democracy. They wanted democracy. People say, well, that clearly means they didn't want communism. Not necessarily. Democracy is in the Chinese constitution many, many times. When Mao came to power, what did he call the time in which he took power? He called it the New Democratic Revolution, right? Paul Robeson, he used to sing the Chinese national anthem when he was, and the words that he sang for it was, "Arise, all who refuse to be bond slaves. Stand up and fight for liberty and true democracy." Now, obviously, the Chinese translation is a little different. The Chinese translation, it's with our very flesh and blood, we can build a new Great Wall. But that was the way the Chinese national anthem was translated into English, was stand up and fight for liberty and true democracy. The Chinese government calls itself the People's Democratic Dictatorship. That's the name of the government, the People's Democratic Dictatorship. It's like, so democracy itself is just a word that has all kinds of different meaning, right? It comes from ancient Greek, and it means the rule of the people. The Greeks meant the word democracy to be very bad. They considered it mob rule. The republic was elected representative government, but democracy was a bad thing. Democracy was considered to be mob rule and chaos, right? I forget, who was it? One of these ancient Greek philosophers, Plato or one of them, he thought it was a cycle, right? That first you have a monarchy, you have a good king. That's a monarchy. But then the good king deteriorates into tyranny. And so you have tyranny, right? So out of tyranny, you get oligarchy. And oligarchy is a good elite, a good responsible elite who rule over the population. But oligarchy deteriorates into plutocracy, right? And plutocracy is the rule of the corrupt and rich. And then plutocracy deteriorates into the republic. And the republic is a responsible elected government. And then the republic deteriorates into democracy, which is vulgar mob rule. And democracy then deteriorates out of democracy, vulgar mob rule. You get a monarch, right? And I believe that was like what I think it was it Aristotle or Socrates or one of those ancient thinkers. He had this theory that in Athens, that's the way it was. It was a cycle, right? Now I obviously don't find that to be the case, but that was what they had observed, at least in Greece, was that their society kind of cycled through it because that was what they believed. And democracy, the word, when it was originally used by the Greeks, it was meant in a derogatory manner. It was not considered to be a good thing. They believed in the republic was good, democracy was bad. But regardless, the word democracy is in the Chinese constitution many places, right? And saying you believe in democracy doesn't in and of itself mean you're against communism, right? And that there were more pictures of Mao in Tiananmen Square than there had ever been since the Cultural Revolution. And that there were a lot of neo-Maoists in Tiananmen Square who thought Deng Xiaoping was a sellout and wanted to go back to the hard line. And a lot of the young people in Tiananmen Square were racist, and no one ever talks about this. And people get angry when I point this out. I will show you. Nicholas Kristof was the New York Times correspondent in China. Lead up to the Tiananmen protests in 1989. There were race riots happening all over China. The Chinese government at that time was having a program for black students. Black students were being admitted into the colleges, and in the lead up to the Tiananmen Square protests, and I've got the link, there's even a Wikipedia page. All over Chinese universities, they were having race riots against the presence of black people on Chinese campuses. And they were saying, read about it, the Nanjing anti-African protests. They were angry. These Chinese students were angry that China was wasting its money giving education to these black people, and these black people were dating dating, Chinese women and, taking our women. And there were race riots all over the Chinese campuses. A lot of the students that were gathering in Tiananmen Square were protesting about they didn't want black people at their colleges, right? That was a big part of their protest, right? Some of them were hardline communists. Some of them were racists. They didn't want black people at their colleges. You'd had the Nanjing anti-African protest, 1988, 1989. They continued. That was a big part of it. Some of them probably wanted Western capitalism. Some of them probably didn't even know what they wanted, right? Maybe they wanted more civil liberties. Who knows, right? But a color revolution, that's why it's a color, right? That's the secret to the color revolution formula. It's about whatever the fuck you want it to be about, right? If you're mad about anything, right? And Occupy Wall Street was very much a color revolution. I was part of it. It was a great place. I was arrested in Occupy Wall Street protests. I think Occupy Wall Street was a great place, but I do know that one section of the ruling class was supporting it. And the way they kept control of it was making sure it was not about anything, right? That was a big thing. All the people that were being paid to be there, all the NGO-cialists, all the NGO kids, their big thing. We can't demand anything. Oh, no, we can't have any demands. Why? Because if we demanded something, then it would be about something. And then it couldn't just be whatever anybody wanted. What it was really about was the Tea Party was kicking around Barack Obama. And so the Democrats needed to have their own mob to kick back. That's what it was about. But the Democrats didn't want to make it about anything because then they might have to deliver on it. Right? So we wanted to make it about jobs. We wanted to make it about healthcare. We wanted to make it about different things. And they were always like, oh, we can't raise demands. And they would make the stupidest arguments. One of my favorite arguments I would hear from these people, right? The Occupy anarchists would say, well, if we demand stuff, Caleb, all the government has to do is give in to our demands, and then the revolution's over. And I was just like, really? So you think we'll demand full employment, jobs for all, and the government will give everyone a job in order to, you really believe that? And second of all, if that were to happen, right? If we were to actually create a situation where our protests were so intense that the government just had to give in and give everyone a job, that would encourage people to mobilize, right? When you can win victories like that, that would mobilize people to, more people would protest, more people would protest than ever before, right? If you did that. You're on the list, Frank. You're on the list. So, that was a ridiculous argument. They did everything they could, everything they possibly could to prevent any demands from being raised because it was basically a color revolution. The thing about color revolutions is they are just a smokescreen. They're just a spectacle for the media. The actual power changes behind the scenes. They set the stage for a coup. That's what a color revolution does. Is the people are out in the streets and they're protesting and they're making a scene and they got the symbol, all that. And that creates an atmosphere with which a section of the military overthrows the government, right? It's about setting the stage for a coup. That's basically what a color revolution is. It sets the stage for a coup. And in fact, you could argue that that's Louis Bonaparte, right? Louis Bonaparte, the first Bonapartist, right? Marx was living in Paris, right? 1851, right? Talk about it in chapter 2 of this book. Marx was living in Paris. And, they assembled a mob of desperately poor people to be thousands of poor people out there in the streets to support. And that set the stage for Louis Bonaparte to set up his coup. A color revolution, basically what happens is all of a sudden a bunch of people start protesting. And what are they protesting about? No one knows. They're just angry. And there's usually one word, against corruption. We're against corruption. Or we're for democracy. Or we're for human rights. Or all day, all week, Occupy Wall Street. We're the 99%. What does that mean? I don't know. Whatever you want it to mean. Whatever. They make it about whatever. I make it about a color, and all kinds of people are protesting because they're really mad because they want democracy. They want human rights. No one knows what it's about. Right. And everyone in the world starts assembling, and all the Western media, all the mainstream media starts highlighting it. Look at all these people. They're protesting. Usually the police beat up some of them or something, and they film them getting beaten up by the police. Usually there's a section of the police that'll come over to their side and join them, and then everyone applauds, and oh my God, the police are with the people. And then what happens is the military overthrows the government. A general or somebody marches into the presidential palace and arrests the head of state, and the West takes over. Right? And that's what happened in Romania. That's what happened in Czechoslovakia. That's what happened in all of these countries that had a color revolution. There are a bunch of people out there singing Kumbaya. And the sad thing is a lot of them didn't want capitalism. Right? Most of the people that were marching in the 1989, 1990, 91 color revolutions, they didn't want free markets. They wanted to keep guaranteed jobs, keep guaranteed healthcare, keep guaranteed education. But they also thought that they would get a new level of freedom, a new level of consumer goods, a new, they didn't know, right? It's a way of manipulating people, right? My understanding is that the coup against Mossadegh that happened in Iran, Mohammad Mossadegh was the president of Iran, and the CIA overthrew him. And they put up fake leaflets in the name of the Communist Party. The two-day party of Iran was the Communist Party of Iran. And my understanding is the CIA put up posters all over Iran in the name of the Communist Party, trying to get people to protest to set the stage for the coup. And the Communist Party, they didn't support it, but they were kind of, other people were able to set the stage for the protest in the name of them. And that things like this happen, right? And there's misinformation and manipulation. These things happen, right? Confusing people. These kind of things go on. So there you go. There you go. Yeah. So, I have not read that book, Frank. Sounds like a Persian name, but I have not read this book. So, I wish I could give you more of an answer there, but that's just a book I have not read, Frank. I just haven't read it. So my apologies. If I'd read the book, I could give you a big speech on it, but haven't read it. I have not read it. So, there you go. There you go. I guess that, unless there's any Rumble rants, that is the end. I probably won't be on tomorrow night. But who knows? I mean, maybe I will be, but maybe I'll get home in time, but I have obligations. And then, Sunday is the big protest. So you probably won't hear from me again until Monday, but I'll do my best. I will do my best to get back on here. Let me just say that. I'll try to be on before Monday. I'll try to do a Sunday night stream or a Saturday night stream, but can't guarantee it. It's likely, it's very possible the next time I'm able to join you all is on Monday evening, but never say never, right? You never say never. So thank you everybody for all your support. Go on out. Big rallies happening. Big protests are happening on Sunday. There's going to be big protests that are happening. Be there. Don't miss it. It's going to be important. We really need you to be there in the streets. Say no to nuclear war. It should be good. Thanks for everything you do. Thanks for everyone. And we'll be back. I do want to encourage folks, I am trying to rebuild my Patreon, so if you're able to support, if you want to support the work of this channel, you want to support my work in general, I could use the support on Patreon, trying to rebuild. We had a couple people join recently. That's great. I'm trying to do more patrons only streams. So if you would be appreciated, we could use your support on Patreon. Trying to rebuild the Patreon, keep this community going. Big day of protest coming up on Sunday. I guess I'll put on the closing music. In the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.